All right, so it's test time. Are y'all ready for a test? Yep. Okay, now if you were at the first service, don't be sharing, okay? Just keep your mouth closed and unless you give the wrong answer. And I have to tell you, the early service didn't do very well. You're not surprised, right? Well, don't get too proud of yourself yet. Question number 1. Before Mount Everest was discovered, what was the highest mountain on earth? Mount Everest. It hadn't been discovered yet. Boy, you all are with it. You all learned that there was a trick to these questions. All right, well, let's see if you can get the harder ones now. A child is born in Boston to parents who both were born in Boston, but the child is not a United States citizen. How is that possible? We stumped them. Born before 1776. Give that man a gold star. All right. So here's the hard one. You all ready? How many animals of each sex did Moses take on the ark? Now, I have to tell you, I saw about 5 hands go up with the number 2. It was Noah. And it would have been just 1. So why the test? Well, the test is to help you start thinking about being contagious. Now, we've been talking about being contagious, and 2 weeks ago, we discovered the main reason for being contagious, and the main reason to become contagious as Christians is because people... Okay, y'all were here, I saw you. Because people... Oh, thank you. How many of you matter? All right. How many people out there matter? All of them. So then, the next week, which was last week, we started talking about how do we show people that they matter, and how do we begin being contagious. And we turn to Scripture, and we turn to the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus gets his disciples together, and he very clearly says to them, you are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the earth. So turn to a neighbor and say, you are salt and light. That's right. I want you to remember that. And then we talked about how salt was good for a whole bunch of things, but as far as Christianity goes, the single most important thing that salt does is as people are around us, the salt of the earth, they become thirsty for God. That's the single most important reason. And secondly, we're called to be light because the light, if we're the light of the world, we are pointing the way to heaven. We are pointing the way to God as the light. So what? It sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds good to say, I am the salt of the earth. Y'all think about that for a minute. Stand up tall and repeat after me. I am the salt of the earth. Too bad most of you are on low-sodium diets. Well, what's next then? If we are salt and if we are light, I am going to suggest that the next thing we need is a plan for being and becoming contagious. In other words, we need a plan for being salt and light that makes sense to our world, and especially to the people outside our walls. So I came up with something really simple. It's called the three Ps of being contagious. So there are three things that all begin with the letter P that you can do in order to be contagious. And the first P is, and by the way, this is all based on a farmer's analogy. I know some of you are farmers, right? How many of you are farmers? Martha's a farmer. She's got a garden. Put your hand up, Martha. Yeah. I grew up on a farm. Now, I grew up on a watermelon farm. About 400 or 500 acres of watermelon. Just so you know, that's a lot of watermelon. Now, the best thing about watermelons is after they've been harvested, you get to eat them. And then you get to spit the seeds. Now, I know most of you are now enjoying seedless watermelons. I wish you wouldn't. They aren't very good. They're not very sweet. And they don't give you seeds to spit. Some things are more important. Seeds. I told the children that we were all seeds of one kind or another. Why is that important? So we're going to go backwards now. One of the things that always happened on our watermelon farm was that after all of the watermelons were farmed, we did something to the ground. Do you know what we did? We plowed it. And when you plow ground, you aerate it, you turn whatever's on top back in underneath so that the nitrogen levels stay good. And so in the next year, when you plant, things grow. Now, it isn't a perfect scenario, and my grandfather, who was actually the original owner of the farm, had a system where a section of his land every year was left what is called fallow. In other words, they didn't plow it, they didn't plant on it, they just let it grow. And one of the really cool things is that's where our families actually got their watermelon for dinner. Because no matter the fact that we didn't ever plant anything on it, didn't mean things didn't grow. Now, one of the cool things about living on a watermelon farm is during harvest, when they're cutting the watermelon off the vine, they throw it up in a truck. You know, they still do it that way now. And they drive up and down, and you chuck watermelons up. And that works really well until the guy in the truck has 2 watermelon coming at him at the same time. It's always bad. A 20-pound watermelon hits the ground, it goes splat. And those of us who are children get to eat up afterwards. And the best part is those watermelon have seeds, and those seeds get left in the ground. And guess what happens the next year? Those seeds sprout, and those seeds grow watermelon. And that's where people who own the watermelon farms would get their watermelon for dinner. Because the ones you put on the truck, they're weighed to go to grocery stores and things like that. Well, then you'd plow that land. Now, when I talk about Christians needing to be plowed, what I'm talking about is we need to be cultivated and created, ready to become contagious. And by that, I mean we need to be aware of our surroundings. And we need to be aware that there are people all around us who don't know Jesus. And they're out there, just so you know. Probably as many as 70 to 80% of the people in Dallas County don't really know Jesus. Oh, they've heard of him because this is America and this is Texas, where God and country and flag are, and other things are just a part of our culture. But if you ask somebody, do you know Jesus is Lord and Savior, 70% of the time you're going to get a blank look. And then they'll say something like, oh yeah, I grew up in a church somewhere. The clue is the blank look. So we need to be aware that the folks out and around us aren't really Christians. And the reason that's important is because on week 1 we decided that all people matter. So if all people really matter, we can't really ignore them, can we? Or we shouldn't anyway. So we need to get ourselves ready to engage the people around us. They're all out there. We need to be ready to talk to them. We need to be ready to show them we care about them. We need to know their hurts, their joys, their loves, their hatreds. We need to know that there's pain all around us. And we need to be able to talk with people about all of those issues in such a way that they know we care. That's all plowing really is. It's about putting ourselves in position to care for others. John Maxwell said it this way. He says, you know, people really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if we're going to be contagious, we have to be caring. And that means we have to be aware of the people around us and their needs, their hurts, their joys. We need to be paying attention. And that's what it means to plow, to be plowed. Now, the second P, after you plow the ground, you can plant it. Now, planting is really fun if you've got seeds and you're growing a garden, and I can't wait to have fresh peppers and fresh cucumbers and fresh zucchini, and I think we've got enough planted over there that some of you are going to benefit from that, by the way. Anthony wasn't far off. We're going to have salad for everybody. Somebody will have to provide the lettuce. I don't think any of us planted lettuce. Martha, did you plant lettuce? No. So we'll go to Sprouts for lettuce or someplace. But if we don't plant the seed, what's going to grow? Nothing. Just about guaranteed. So what does that mean for us as being contagious Christians? Well, that means that sometime we're going to have to talk about Jesus. We're going to have to talk about spiritual matters. We're going to have to talk about what God means to us, what God has done in our lives. And next week is Mother's Day. And the theme for Mother's Day is how we're all called to be a witness, and how being a witness means having a story. How many of you have a story? By the way, you all have a story. It's a trick question. You just don't know what to tell. Planting the word, planting the seeds, takes our caring to communication. So we're going to move from caring about people to communicating to people. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to take out our Bibles every time somebody comes to us and says, I've got this problem? No. It means we're going to listen. And we're going to take our story and put it as part of their story. And we're going to see where God has moved in our lives so God might be able to move in theirs. And when we learn to do that, guess what's going to happen? Plants are going to grow. Good things are going to happen. There's going to be all kinds of blessings. And when we plant, here's the best part. When we plant, then we get the opportunity to pick, which is the third P. We're going to plow, we're going to plant, and we're going to pick. And when we pick the fruit, we get to celebrate. But we have to communicate the story so that others can come to know Jesus. It means that we are going to eventually have to say, so what do you think, Fred? Do you believe or not? Now, sometimes that happens in church. You know, it's kind of funny. One time I was preaching, and I got a phone call Sunday morning, and it was one of my church members. She was really excited. She says, John's going to give his life to Jesus today. What do I do? I said, pray. She said, I thought you should come pray. I said, you're there. I don't know what to pray. Pray that Jesus comes into his life. Oh. I wasn't going to steal her joy. He came. They'd prayed. He had said yes to Jesus. We brought him into the church. About 7 years later, he was serving as an elder, and that couple, in the course of 7 years, brought on average 2 new couples a year into the church. Now, were they out there preaching? Nope. They were about as quiet as you could be. But they were out there caring and communicating and bringing them to the point of having to make a decision. Because you see, my friends, the really cool thing about faith is that eventually you have to make a choice. And sometimes people are going to choose not to be people of faith. They're going to choose not to be changed. But at some point, if we care and if we communicate, conversion's going to happen. Most of you know that for most of my time in Texas for the last 3 years, I've been going to the same restaurant on Sunday night. If you ever have an emergency and you can't get a hold of me on Sunday night, call the Texas Roadhouse. It's likely I'm there. Just ask the hostess for Pastor David. They know who I am. They'll know which table I'm sitting at. They'll send somebody to get me. Well, Sheila's been gone. When Sheila's gone, I go to the Texas Roadhouse a little more often than just on Sunday night. Go ahead, tell her. It won't be anything she doesn't know. So one day last week, I couldn't figure out what to eat because I'd eaten all the food in the refrigerator. And my great joy is not going to any grocery store to pick out salad. Okay? It just isn't. If it's in the refrigerator, I'll eat it. The refrigerator, I'd eaten all of the lean meat, and I'd eaten all the green stuff. So I went to Roadhouse. I was so excited. They weren't busy. And in the course of the night, I talked to 4 different waitstaff people. Of course, they put me at just the right spot, so every single server had to walk by. They'll never seat me there again. Because they all stopped to talk to me. And one was one of my favorites, and she's been one of my favorites since the first time I went there, and she said, I am so excited to see you. Because she doesn't work on Sunday nights, and no matter how often I come on Sunday night, she's not working Sunday night. She was so excited. She says, I heard that you might come in because I had said something about coming in. She says, I have something to show you. My life is really amazing. I said, what do you have to show me? She says, well, my daughter's here. I said, cool. I'd met her daughter once before, maybe twice before. I could not have picked her out of a lineup. Sorry. And so is her husband. And I want them to meet you because you've really changed our lives. I go in, I eat steak, I go home. And I listen. I talk with them. Her daughter's pregnant. They're going to have a baby. One of the things that started happening is that the waitresses there, when their children are around, they bring their children over to meet the pastor. I'm going to be doing a wedding. Not of the children, but of another couple in the restaurant. All you have to do is listen. All you have to do is make yourself available. All you have to do is say, gosh, isn't God good? I tell you that story because most people, when it comes to being evangelists, think that it's hard. They think that it's impossible for them to do for one reason or another. But the reality is, all of you have people in your lives that if you'll spend some time listening to, if you'll spend some time hearing and caring and speaking into their lives with good news, lives change. And people want to see you. You know, I've known some evangelists that people don't want to see. I suspect you've known some. But if you care, if you communicate, you're going to get to convert. But you have to do it in that order. Because no matter how hard you try, if you don't plow the ground first, if you don't plant the seed second, then there's going to be no picking. It's that simple. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Why? Because people matter and we need a plan. So today, I gave you a plan. Plow the ground. Learn to care. Plant the seed. Speak into it. And third, give opportunity. And the really cool thing is, when this baby's born, I'm probably going to get to do another child dedication, at least in their lives, if not in the lives of this church. And I don't know about you, but in my opinion, that is good news. And all of God's people said, amen. So, we're going to sing our hymn of invitation.